Let's rewind the clock 15 years to March 2009 to examine this case. Southgate, a district situated in North London, is not where our story begins. Instead, it commences in Cottard, a quaint village in Hertfordshire County, approximately 30 miles from the bustling capital. On Sunday, March 22, 2009, a local farmer embarked on his daily work at the family farm. As he drove his tractor around the expansive fields, which required extensive processing due to the vast area of the farmland, he spotted what appeared to be a green sports bag near the main road at the edge of one field. Pressed for time, the landowner made a mental note to return later and investigate the mysterious object during a break. Several hours later, the farmer revisited the field's edge, disembarked from his tractor, and approached the green bag. Upon unzipping it, he discovered an item wrapped in a blue plastic bag adorned with a printing motif and secured with tape. Reaching inside, the man prodded the contents with his finger. The object felt soft to the touch, but its identity remained elusive. An unsettling feeling began to grow within him. The bag appeared too new and well-maintained to be carelessly discarded, and the deliberately concealed contents suggested that someone had intentionally disposed of the bag and its contents by tossing it far from the road. Reluctant to unwrap and examine the package's contents, the farmer opted to contact the police and report the unusual find on his property. Shortly after, several officers arrived at the field where the bag was discovered. They scrutinized it from various angles, and one officer reached inside, probing the bundled object. After a brief moment, the officer raised his head to his colleague and expressed his belief that he had felt toes. The bag, it turned out, contained a severed human leg. However, the whereabouts of the person to whom it belonged remained a mystery. Had they sustained an injury, or had their life been tragically cut short? The area surrounding the leg's discovery was swiftly cordoned off to preserve the crime scene from potential contamination by passers-by. However, no additional evidence was uncovered at the site. The severed limb was promptly transported to the morgue for further analysis. Upon examination, the forensic expert concluded that the leg belonged to an adult, likely a male, based on its size. The presence of a characteristic reddish rash on the skin, indicative of eczema, provided insight into the victim's medical condition. Beyond this, little could be discerned about the owner of the dismembered limb at the time. The expert noted, however, that the amputation was executed with remarkable precision, suggesting the involvement of someone with extensive knowledge of anatomy. Initially, investigators considered the possibility of a medical amputation given the clean and precise nature of the cut. They speculated that the leg might have been stolen from a hospital for unknown reasons and subsequently discarded in the field. Further analysis, however, revealed that while the amputation was not strictly medical, it was performed by someone with a deft hand and prior experience wielding a blade, hinting at a professional or near-professional level of skill. This revelation offered the police a potential lead, suggesting the involvement of a doctor, butcher, or someone with a profession that required a deep understanding of anatomy. If the leg had not been pilfered from a hospital, it implied that an individual had suffered an injury, likely the result of a criminal act. The primary objective for law enforcement was to establish the identity of the leg's owner, a task that proved exceedingly challenging. The DNA profile extracted from the limb was cross-referenced with the national database, but no matches were found, indicating that the victim had no prior criminal history. This avenue of investigation reached a dead end, as no missing persons reports had been filed in the vicinity. The absence of hands for fingerprinting or a face for photographs and flyers left the police with little to work with beyond the solitary left leg. Despite the paucity of evidence, the case was not relegated to the Unsolved Crimes Archive. Merely a week later, on March 29, 2009, a couple walking their dogs stumbled upon a left forearm on the roadside near another village in Hertfordshire, approximately 25 miles from the initial discovery. The police were summoned once more, and law enforcement officials immediately suspected that the forearm belonged to the same individual whose leg had been found by the farmer. DNA analysis confirmed this suspicion, but the hand separation from the forearm eliminated any potential clues to the victim's identity. The perpetrator's efforts to conceal the victim's name were evident. Like the leg, the arm was meticulously severed, showcasing a similar level of precision. News of these grisly discoveries spread rapidly, garnering significant media attention due to the rarity of such incidents in rural areas. Severed limbs were not commonplace on the side of the road, and the story's resemblance to a horror film piqued public interest. Detectives hoped the increased visibility would expedite the victim's identification, but the remote location yielded no witnesses. The tranquil country roads were seldom frequented by motorists or pedestrians. Residents of nearby villages were left with a plethora of questions. Who did the body parts belong to? How did they end up in this peaceful area? Where was the rest of the remains? However, the community had little time to speculate, as a third body fragment was soon discovered, followed by a fourth and a fifth. Over the ensuing weeks, several more parts were found scattered across different locations. The police found themselves in the macabre position of piecing together a puzzle composed of a deceased person's remains, a task as repugnant as it was challenging. On March 31, 2009, yet another grim discovery was made in a different village as a local farmer meticulously inspected his cattle pen. He stumbled upon a severed head, callously discarded in the field without any attempt at concealment or wrapping. DNA analysis confirmed that the skull belonged to the same individual as the previously discovered arm and leg. The perpetrator's signature neat cut was evident once more, but this time their determination to prevent the victim's identification became even more apparent. The face had been brutally disfigured, with the nose, ears, tongue, and eyes removed, and the skin and flesh painstakingly stripped away. However, the criminal made a critical oversight in their zealous efforts to render the face unrecognizable. They neglected to consider the teeth, which could provide the police with a significant lead in identifying the victim. This misstep was a glaring error on the part of the perpetrator, as dental records are frequently utilized in investigations to establish the identity of the deceased. The fourth body part, the victim's right leg, was unearthed on April 7, mirroring the left leg's discovery. It was sealed in blue plastic, fastened with tape, and placed inside a bag before being abandoned near a bypass road. The news of this latest finding spread rapidly, fueling public horror and anticipation regarding the location and timing of the next gruesome discovery. The criminal's actions seemed to mock law enforcement, akin to playing a twisted game. The media dubbed the perpetrator the "jigsaw killer," as each recovered body part represented another piece of the macabre puzzle that the police needed to assemble to identify the victim and apprehend the culprit. Within a mere 4 days, the investigation gained momentum as new evidence emerged, shedding light on the victim's cause of death. On April 11, 2009, a green suitcase bearing the same brand as the previously found duffel bag was discovered in a ditch. Inside, investigators found the right forearm, the upper portion of the left arm, and a male torso. The torso proved pivotal in determining the cause of death, revealing 2 stab wounds to the back that had punctured the lung. The knife used in the attack had a blade approximately 4 inches in length. This discovery confirmed that the killing was intentional, as the wounds were inflicted from behind. The absence of defensive wounds on the body part suggested that the victim did not engage in a struggle for his life. It is possible that he was unaware of the impending danger, depriving him of the opportunity to fight back. The investigation proceeded on multiple fronts simultaneously. First, a CT scan of the skull was sent to facial recognition experts in the hope that they could reconstruct an image of the victim's appearance when alive. The goal was to release this image to the public to aid in identification. Second, the bags, suitcases, and cases where the body parts were discovered underwent forensic examination. However, the absence of fingerprints on the items themselves greatly disappointed the investigators, suggesting that the perpetrator had worn gloves and possessed a keen understanding of forensic techniques. Despite this setback, a small clue emerged upon closer inspection. Experts detected minuscule blue and green fibers on the tape. Microscopic analysis revealed that the blue threads had a fuzzy texture, reminiscent of peach fuzz, indicating something soft and fluffy. The experts advised the detectives to be attentive to blue items if they identified a suspect and entered their home. This would allow the experts to compare the fibers and definitively establish a connection to the evidence. While this information did not provide immediate leads, it held the potential to play a pivotal role in the future. Concurrently, Authorities searched for missing persons who matched the victim's profile. Based on the recovered body parts, they estimated that the victim was either European, Asian, or of mixed ancestry, with a short stature and a rather large build. The age range was approximated to be between 40 and 60 years old. All recently disappeared individuals fitting this profile were scrutinized. Moreover, the police appealed to the public for any relevant information. Officers diligently responded to and investigated various leads and theories provided by local residents. Amidst a plethora of unhelpful calls, a breakthrough emerged in the form of an oral report of a missing person. Just days after the most recent discovery in mid-April, a man approached the police after seeing a public appeal on television and in the media about the unidentified crime victim. He believed that the profile matched his missing brother, Jeffrey Howe, who was 49 years old at the time of his disappearance. Born in 1960, Jeffrey Howe had recently resided in the Southgate area of North London, where he owned an apartment. He worked as a sales manager at a kitchenware store and had been married a couple of times before. But by the spring of 2009, he was divorced. Described as a calm and hardworking individual, Jeffrey had invested significant effort into becoming one of the best employees at his store, earning high regard from his colleagues. Outside of work, Jeffrey was an avid football fan, supporting the Manchester United team. His brother portrayed him as a charming, cheerful person with a heart of gold, capable of getting along with anyone. While not perfect, having had a couple of minor disputes with neighbors in his apartment building, the majority of people who knew Jeffrey spoke positively about him. His sudden disappearance came as a shock to many who knew him. Jeffrey's disappearance in mid-March 2009, just weeks before the first body part was discovered, drew the attention of the police following the report from his brother. The missing man's profile closely matched that of the victim, middle-aged, similar height and build, and also suffering from eczema. Moreover, experts found that photographs of Jeffrey's face seemed to correspond with the proportions of the recovered skull. While this appeared to be a promising lead, official confirmation was necessary to conclusively identify the victim as Jeffrey Howe. Due to Jeffrey's adoption as a child, DNA comparison with his parents or other relatives was not possible. However, dental records proved invaluable in this situation. A few weeks into the investigation, it was officially established that the crime victim, whose body parts had been scattered throughout the district, was indeed 49-year-old Jeffrey Howe. With this confirmation, the police could proceed with their investigation. The authorities now focused on determining who might have had a motive to want Jeffrey dead. To uncover the truth, detectives delved deeper into the victim's personal life. Through conversations with neighbors and Jeffrey's brother, it was revealed that as of March 2009, Jeffrey was not living alone in his apartment. He had two tenants residing with him, a couple named Stephen Marshall and Sarah Bush. Stephen, aged around 38, and Sarah, only 20, were in a relationship despite their significant age difference. Their relationship had begun in a rather ordinary manner. Sarah had previously provided intimate services, and Stephen had been one of her clients, paying her in cash until they started dating regularly. Stephen and Jeffrey had become close friends. While working together at the same kitchenware store, Stephen had already held several jobs, including working as a debt collector, a personal trainer, and even running his own gym before finding himself at the store. The two men often spent time together after their shifts, drinking and attending football matches. At one point, Stephen faced financial hardships and found himself temporarily without a place to live. Jeffrey, known for his kind nature, offered his friend and his girlfriend Sarah a place to stay in his apartment for a nominal fee until Stephen could get back on his feet. Stephen and Sarah had moved into Jeffrey's apartment approximately 5 months before his disappearance. They had taken up residence in November 2008 and had been living there ever since. The mention of tenant Stephen Marshall's name immediately raised suspicions among the detectives. Marshall's criminal history, primarily involving prohibited substances and an assault with a firearm, painted him as an individual capable of committing such a heinous crime in the eyes of experienced investigators. On April 21, 2009, detectives visited Jeffrey Howe's former apartment in Southgate. The tenants, Stephen and Sarah, greeted them warmly and agreed to cooperate with the police. When questioned about Jeffrey's disappearance, the couple claimed to have limited knowledge, stating that they hadn't seen Jeffrey since around February. Stephen explained that Jeffrey had been experiencing financial difficulties and personal problems shortly before his disappearance. According to Stephen, Jeffrey had become withdrawn and preoccupied but had not shared the details of his struggles with his tenants. Based on their account, it appeared that Jeffrey had left voluntarily due to his hardships without disclosing his destination or maintaining contact. Stephen and Sarah claimed to be unaware of his current whereabouts. However, the police found their story suspicious as it contained inconsistencies. Initially, Stephen asserted that he and Jeffrey were best friends, but moments later, he insisted that he had no knowledge of Jeffrey's whereabouts and hadn't heard from him in months. The situation seemed odd. A friend had allowed them to live with him, then vanished without a trace, and they continued to enjoy his hospitality without concern or attempts to locate him. Stephen's demeanor suggested a lack of concern for Jeffrey's well-being, raising questions about whether it was merely a lack of empathy or if Stephen knew that his friend was no longer alive. During a brief inspection of the premises, the police noticed additional alarming signs. In Jeffrey's bedroom, they discovered a personalized license plate from his car, which had been removed for unknown reasons. The vehicle itself was nowhere to be found. If Jeffrey had left in his car, there would be no reason to remove the plates, as it would be illegal and likely to attract attention from law enforcement. Another suspicious detail was the absence of a bed in the owner's bedroom, replaced by an inflatable mattress and two blue inflatable pillows on the floor. The detective speculated that if Stephen and Sarah had disposed of the owner's bed and mattress, they might have been trying to conceal evidence of a crime that had occurred in the apartment. Given the tenant's strange behavior and these concerning observations, the officers made the risky decision to arrest the couple pending further clarification of the case. The risk stemmed from the fact that at the time of Stephen and Sarah's arrest, there was no official confirmation that the victim was indeed Jeffrey Howe. The identification had been made through dental records despite the perpetrator's efforts to prevent recognition. The investigators now had to await the expert report to proceed with their case against the suspects. The police found themselves in a precarious situation, lacking concrete evidence linking Stephen and Sarah to the crime. Keeping them in custody indefinitely would not be feasible, so it was imperative to uncover evidence implicating the tenants in Jeffrey's death or risk their release. The decision to arrest was made on a hunch, as the detective sensed that the couple might flee at any moment, potentially evading capture. At the police station, Stephen and Sarah were interrogated separately. Both denied any involvement in Jeffrey's disappearance. Stephen remained uncooperative, answering every question with no comment. Even when shown a photograph of Jeffrey and asked if he recognized him, his behavior only heightened suspicions. If Jeffrey was his good friend and Stephen was innocent, why would he refuse to cooperate with the investigation? Sarah, on the other hand, was more forthcoming but provided no new information, reiterating that Jeffrey had been troubled and left of his own accord. It was evident that neither suspect would be forthcoming, leaving the police with limited time to extract a confession or uncover irrefutable evidence. To the detectives' relief, official confirmation arrived, identifying the deceased as Jeffrey Howe. A forensic team was dispatched to search. The police suspected that Jeffrey's death had occurred in his apartment. Despite the seemingly clean and tidy appearance, ultraviolet lighting revealed a significant amount of blood under the carpets, floorboards, baseboards, and flooring, particularly in the master bedroom and adjoining bathroom. Analysis confirmed that the blood belonged to Jeffrey. This discovery led to Stephen Marshall and Sarah Bush being charged with Jeffrey Howe's murder. However, the case against them continued to build. Blue and green fibers found on the adhesive tape used to secure the plastic bags containing the victim's remains matched those from the blue inflatable bed in the main bedroom, indicating its presence during the dismemberment. A witness also reported seeing Stephen Marshall carrying a wooden bed out of the apartment and disposing of it in a large dumpster shortly after Jeffrey's disappearance. The green fibers on the tape were traced back to a green polo shirt belonging to Stephen, bearing the logo of a gym he had previously owned. This served as another piece of irrefutable evidence suggesting that Stephen was either wearing the shirt or had it in the room during the gruesome act. With the mounting evidence against Stephen and Sarah, it was clear that they were responsible for Jeffrey's death. The only remaining question was the motive behind such a heinous crime. The motive behind Jeffrey Howe's murder was shockingly mundane: money and greed. When Stephen and Sarah were facing financial hardship, Jeffrey generously allowed them to stay in a spare room in his apartment until they could regain their footing. he offered to charge them only a portion of the utilities, with rent being essentially symbolic. Jeffrey considered Stephen one of his closest friends and was glad to assist. However, this arrangement soon soured as Jeffrey felt taken advantage of, with the couple failing to uphold their end of the agreement. Stephen was reluctant to pay even the minimal rent, and what Jeffrey had anticipated to be a month or two of accommodation stretched much longer. The tenants made no effort to secure their own housing, content to live carefree at their friend's expense. Frustrated by the constant reminders about unpaid utilities, Jeffrey's relationship with Stephen deteriorated, ultimately ending their friendship. It is likely that Jeffrey eventually asked them to vacate the room and leave the apartment. Angered by this turn of events and determined to continue living at Jeffrey's expense, Stephen and Sarah resorted to the unthinkable, eliminating him. The motive of greed and financial gain was further confirmed by the couple's actions following Jeffrey's murder. Feeling unbridled freedom and impunity, they began stealing from their former friend. They wrote themselves checks from Jeffrey's checkbook, ordered goods online using his bank card, purchased new cell phones, and indulged in takeout food. As the funds on the card dwindled, they started selling Jeffrey's belongings, including his phone, furniture, and TV. Just days after his death, the couple sold Jeffrey's car, listing it online, removing the plates, and providing the buyer with a handwritten receipt. Stephen even went so far as to paste Jeffrey's personalized license plates over his own, fill up his car's tank at a gas station, and flee without paying. During a search of Stephen's car trunk, a forensic examination revealed traces of Jeffrey Howe's blood, indicating that Stephen had used his own vehicle to transport the dismembered body parts, likely hoping to evade identification and any connection to them. Cell phone data also placed Stephen and Sarah together in the remote village where Jeffrey's mutilated skull was later discovered. In January 2010, nearly a year after Jeffrey's death, Stephen Marshall and Sarah Bush stood trial, initially pleading not guilty and attempting to shift blame onto each other. Stephen eventually confessed to the crime. Based on cell phone records, Jeffrey's death was presumed to have occurred on the night of March 8, 2009. While Sarah was visiting a friend overnight, Stephen admitted to single-handedly killing Jeffrey, stabbing him twice in the back, and leaving his former friend, who had helped him in a time of need, to bleed to death. Stephen also revealed the reason behind the precise dismemberment of the body parts. He had prior experience in this grisly task, having performed at least 4 dismemberments for one of North London's largest crime families. The police confirmed links between Stephen and this criminal organization. It was this expertise that had initially misled the medical examiner and police into suspecting someone with a medical background. Upon pleading guilty, Stephen Marshall received a life sentence with a minimum term of 36 years, eligible for parole no earlier than 2046. Sarah Bush, while cleared of the serious crime, was found to be an accomplice, having tidied the apartment and concealed evidence. She was charged with obstruction of justice and sentenced to 3 years and 9 months in prison. Tragically, Jeffrey Howe's hands and facial fragments were never recovered. Sarah Bush later claimed they were buried in the woods, but she could not recall the exact location. Despite efforts by the police and relatives, the remains of the man who died for his kindness remain lost. This is the end of the story. If you liked this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, it's really important.